us here. And great to see Fraser recovered from his little bang on the head. He wanted a free helicopter ride, I think. Is that the case? We'll hear about that shortly, but also we've got a supplementary agenda, which is for the annual report. Yes. Thank you. I think I've got it there. Perfect. Thanks, Pete. And so I've got Evan, you're there, and is John, he's with us too, is he? Yeah, no, perfect. Cool. Okay, so we go now to agenda. Apologies. Call for apologies. That wasn't an apology, was she? No. Oh, she's there. Oh, perfect. Okay, see you now. Awesome. So no apologies. No public forum. Nothing urgent business. Nothing we're aware of. Minor nature. Ellen. Put your thanks, Ellen.
So I'd like to suggest we have a discussion around vaccination mandates on our facilities.
Yeah, look, I'm comfortable with that. Is everyone comfortable to have a discussion around that? Do we have to move that, or it's just minor nature? I think that's fine. Cool. So we'll just address that in minor nature.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Councillor Booth. Conflicts of interest. Councillor Booth, take that you're a member of the CCO. Understand that. Nothing else from anyone? No. All okay. Cool. So move now to 7.1, which is minutes of the council meeting held on 15th of February. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Parker, thank you. Councillor Riley, happy to second that. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Move now to schedules of functions attended. 8.1 is attended by Mayor, Deputy Mayor and councillors. I'm happy to move that. Thank you. Councillor Wills is the seconder. Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. 8.2, schedule of functions attended by the Chief Executive. Happy to move that as well. Councillor Piddington, comfortable with that, to second that? Thank you. Put the motion to the floor. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. That was a good aye, Barb. We heard that loud and clear. Thank you.
Just so you know, I'm really here. I just haven't got very good coverage, which is why it can't do video and audio at the same time.
No, that's all right. We can hear you loud and clear. Thanks, Councillor Gilchrist. So we're going to move now to supplementary reports. So first, has everyone got that in front of them? Yeah, so we've got 7.2, which is a resolution to include supplementary report. So recommendation is that the adoption of the annual report 2021 be received and considered at the council meeting. Thank you, Councillor Burt. Councillor Parker, any discussion? No, comfortable with that? Put the motion to the floor. Those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Cool. So we move now to the report, which is 7.1, I think. And we'll invite the team up. And also we've got John.
Yes, the auditor present.
Is present. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Jason, yeah, please. Thanks.
Yeah, Your Worship. So look, by way of introduction. Look, thank you, Your Worship, and by way of introduction, the annual report is before you. Look, notwithstanding the challenges of the timing of it and getting it there, we still think when you look at the annual report, it actually is speaks to a pretty good year for council. If you look at the achievements that have been accomplished throughout the year, they are listed there. Notwithstanding the challenges of COVID, we work to continue to innovate and deliver services, and testament to that is, for instance, in the capital delivery, which has nearly doubled in terms of from one year to the next, and that continues on in terms of the momentum we have in the current year. You'll see that there were a number of significant projects undertaken. Through all of that, council ran a pretty strong financial performance, both while expenses were higher than budgeted, so was revenue, and revenue was higher by greater than the increase in expenses. So overall, your operating surplus was a couple of million above where you had anticipated it to be. The upshot of that is that there were strong operating cash flows throughout the year, which underpinned help support the capital delivery program, and you have a pretty strong balance sheet at the end of it. One of the challenges which was noted in getting the annual report here has been, look, is the capacity, the professional shortage in terms of not just auditors, but across really a lot of professions, and that has been a challenge. And then as we worked through the audit, there was an issue referred to as what's called a prior period adjustment. And I'm going to hand this one to Jason, but it is really, I would say in simple terms, it's about the way an asset is measured and presented in council, in the council books. And I've got John here who is far more informed, and Jason, but one way I liken it in a very simple term is this is not necessarily about the value of the assets that we're talking about, but the way they're measured. And so if you think of it in a housing terms, I would say a simple but not complete analogy is you might say, if I measured the value of my house at market value, it might be worth 500. However, I purchased it for 300, and the rule and the policy I have is that I will tell you its value according to its cost price, which is 300. And so that's the issue that has been coming backwards and forwards, and that is how some assets within the subsidiaries are measured and valued, and there are different rules because those subsidiaries are profit oriented, whereas we are non-profit and are called public benefit entities. Jason, is there anything you'd like to say or add to that, or John for that matter? I think it is important we work through, because when you come to adopt the annual report, this is a matter that has been worked through by the auditors and the team.
So yeah, I think if we look to hear from Jason in regard to this, and then we can go to John.
Thank you for that. So I think the key thing to note is councillors were sent an early draft of the document on the 15th of March, and that's the one that you would have had a good chance to have a look through. There's been 2 changes to that document, to the one that's in front of you today, and so I just want to touch on those briefly. There's been, Beats has talked about there being 2 prior period adjustments, and prior period adjustments are quite significant because they affect what's happened in past years. And so as some context, Timaru District Council has 2 associate companies. We've got Primeport, which we have 50% share through TDHL, and Alpine Energy, which we have 47.5% share through TDH as well. And so during the audit, it was identified that those 2 organisations equity account their financial information prepared on accounting policies which are not consistent with Timaru District Council's policies. And what that is in simple terms is that Alpine Energy and Primeport revalue their land and buildings on a regular basis. Timaru District Council does not. So Timaru District Council is about to start revaluing our land and buildings in 2023. And at that point, we'll be able to bring in the revaluations that Alpine and Primeport have done. But in terms of this being a technical issue, because we've got a different accounting policy, we had to back out the revaluation that those 2 companies had within the group accounts. So that accounted for 12.4 million, which backed out from an opening balance. This was all pre-2019, so it goes back in time. Once we revalue our assets in 2023 as a council and change our policy, we'll be able to bring that stuff back in at that point in time. So that one was in the version that you had. The second prior period adjustment is a bit more complicated and took a bit more time for Audit New Zealand and for us to work through, and that's probably what's taken the last couple of weeks just working through this. In 2019, Alpine Energy transitioned to a different revenue recognition policy, and this is around the money that obviously it gets from its customers. So previously, so it's changed the way that they have treated its money they receive up front, and therefore the accounting policy has changed. And so TDC hadn't picked that change up, and so we had to do an adjustment to the accounts for that. So that was $1.16 million of change to a prior period adjustment which happened pre-2019. So that was agreed with Audit New Zealand, because what we wanted to get to at the end of the day is that the value of the investments and these associates that we have in our books are the same as the net assets that we hold. So that's what we've been trying to get to. The reason for the delay was that there was an amount of $1.4 million that had been identified between 2004 and 2008. So it was going back a while in time. And so originally we had thought it was an error. And so that was why we had adjusted as a prior period adjustment. It turned out through more work with Audit New Zealand that it wasn't an error, but we still had to adjust for it. So that's why on page 149 of the full annual report, you'll see a couple of historical adjustments to both Prime Port and Alpine Energy. And so that's to reflect the $1.4 million adjustment to the accounts. So questions on that adjustment? And look, John Mackey is the technical expert on this and will probably be able to assist if I can't answer any questions.
John, did you want to make any further comment on the adjustments before we go to questions?
Just a bit of clarification on the last bit that Jason mentioned. It's a historical difference, not a historical adjustment. So what we aren't sure at this point, because it goes back a long way, just what caused that difference. It could be a legitimate difference. It may be an amount that needs to be adjusted. So that's just needing further investigation. So until we could have confidence that it was an error, our technical, the Audit New Zealand technical team said, treat it as a historical difference, and we will recommend to the council that it investigates further as to what the cause is, because it could be a legitimate reconciling item. That the complexity of accounting standards and the difference that applies between how your subsidiaries account with their accounting policies and the public benefit entity policies Timaru applies can mean there's legitimate differences.
Thank you. Thanks, John. So we'll take questions in regard to this aspect of it, and then we might just put this part to bed, and then we'll take questions in regard to the annual report overall. So Councillor Booth.
Yeah, so obviously the CCOs are commercial entities. Has that created any taxation liabilities for them with this revaluation or alteration?
The simple answer is no. So through TDHL, they account for tax in the right way. It's just really how we consolidate this into the group, and it's purely just a difference of accounting policies between the group and the entities involved. So there's no taxation impacts on that.
Cool, thank you.
And the second adjustment that was made to the version that you received is on page 3, and this was in relation to the 3 waters. On page 3 in relation to the 3 waters reforms. So that section has been rewritten, and this came out of the Audit and Risk Committee in terms of wanting to see a bit more of a positive spin on the direction of travel that Timaru had chosen to undertake in this area. And so that has been rewritten, and it's also had some legal advice put over it as well. So I'm not sure if Bede wants to talk to that anymore, but that's in relation to the 3 waters reform comment.
Oh, thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Probably not a lot to add. It did come as a result of, although it's after balance date, and we note that it is a matter of some significance, and it was thought appropriate to reference that, given that it relates, we do refer to this court action that is on foot with ourselves, Whangarei and Waimakariri District Council. We took the precaution of getting it some legal advice run across it to make sure that the lawyer was comfortable with what was said.
Cool, you're all aware of what we're talking about, those last couple of paragraphs? Yeah. Yep. Cool, any comments on those changes? Happy with that? No, all good. Thanks, Jason.
So those are the 2 changes in this version that you have in front of you from the one that you previously reviewed and that went to Audit and Risk Committee. Bruce Robertson's come back this morning. He's reviewed the annual report, he's reviewed the changes, he's reviewed the letter of representation, which Bede and the Mayor signed off this morning and returned to Audit New Zealand. And Bruce had also reviewed the audit opinion and was comfortable with the opinion that was being issued. John will be talking to that soon. So I think this has been a bit complicated talking about a couple of prior period adjustments, but it doesn't detract from what Bede was talking about at the start in terms of very good financial performance from Timaru District Council for this year, both in terms of its revenue, its expenditure, its balance sheet, and also its achievement of its KPIs as well.
Thanks, Jason. We'll go to questions now. Councillor Booth.
So I see in the budget, there was 82,000, actual was 94. You've accounted for that by saying that
Sorry, can you just alert to a page number?
I'm on page 9.
Thanks.
To the extra cost being the depreciation. About a significant amount of it was about $6 million. So how come we didn't know about that? That should have been in the budget, should it not?
So the major revaluation during this financial year in question was roading. And so if you look at the gain on revaluation, we've made a gain on revaluation of $291 million. We could have guessed what we thought the revaluation would come out at, but you don't guess. And so the $7 million additional depreciation expense recognises the $291 million uplift in the valuation of the roading assets.
So when we're setting the rates and we increased the rates by 11%, we obviously took into account some sort of number, or we didn't.
You do take into account some number, yes. Do you get things right all the time? Not all the time.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Andrew Dixon might be able to talk to this as well a bit, but in terms of the rate setting for the roading program, that isn't done just on the depreciation figure, but on the work program based on their asset data and what they need to do going forward in order to maintain the levels of service. So the depreciation, and I think too, that depreciation figure you're looking at was from the long-term plan 2018 to 28, which predated the change in the accounting policy for the asset as well. So there's a few sort of historical things that influence that outcome as well for the difference, but the rate is set based on the work program to maintain levels of service.
Councillor Piddington.
On the bottom of page 9, Jason, we've got the loss in property and plant of almost $1 million, 563 assets that were impaired during the flooding event, and obsolete, unused assets were written off. Can you give us an example of what they are? And if anything was a major?
In terms of the impaired assets following the flooding event, there are a couple of bridges which, and look, Andrew will know more than me, but there are a couple of bridges that were impacted, some down to one lane, so we impaired the value of those. In terms of the obsolete assets, these were mainly around IT assets, software. Timaru in the past has had its accounting policy at diminishing value, whereas it takes forever to devalue something at diminishing value. So as part of the next year, we're changing a few of our policies to straight line, because we're ending up with a lot of assets which are obsolete, which still have small values left. And so part of this was tidying those up.
Thank you. So I just go to the Zoom. Is there any questions from Councillor Oliver or Councillor Gilchrist? You okay? Just give me a...
All good, thank you.
No, that's cool.
All clear as a bell.
Yeah, clear as mud. Cool, appreciate that. Thank you. Anything further to add, Jason?
I have nothing further to add. I'm sure Mr. Mackey around the audit opinion will have some comments.
Cool. So I've got a question from Councillor Booth, and then we'll go to John.
Your current liabilities, we're 63,400,000 budget. budgeted 19.5. It's quite a variance there. What's the reason for that, you know?
Off the top of my head, I do not know. So, sorry.
No, Jason, I think fair chunk. Sorry, no.
Yes, sorry.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, a fair chunk of it is when you show your borrowings, you split the proportion that is due to be paid within the current year and that which is paid out more than 12 months and might be paid in the next 2 to 3 years. And so if you look, you'll see borrowings have gone from 6 million to 38.5 million, which means we're forecasting to repay 38.5 million in the current year. Now, I suspect that is in terms as would be driven by treasury management and our ability to access quite competitive interest rates and rolling money on and off and so on. So, but what it reflects is the timing of the payments. So some of those borrowings are due within 12 months and some are due more than 12 months and within 12 months go into current liabilities. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So I think we're all okay. Team's all good. We'll go now to you, John, if that's okay.
Thank you. So if the council adopts the annual report that you've got in front of you, we'll issue an unmodified opinion. We do have an explanatory paragraph to say that the audit was late due to the auditor shortage and the impacts of COVID. But you also have an emphasis of matter paragraph. So that's not a qualification. That's just drawing the reader's attention to the disclosure you've got in your financial statements, in the notes to the financial statements that refers to the government's decision to, that they're wanting to centralise 3 waters and do it through 4 entities. And that creates uncertainty as to Timaru District Council, well, I'm telling you already know all that. So the emphasis of matter paragraph just highlights that situation, but that does not reflect badly on Timaru at all. All the other territorial authorities and unitary authorities have got a similar worded emphasis of matter paragraph in their audit opinions.
Thanks, John. Questions for John at all? No. That's all right. Thank you, team. Thank you, John. Really appreciate that. And thank you to the team, Jason and so many others. I know there's a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes by the officers and getting this up to date. And we look at it 9 months on. And, you know, we're almost getting the year, but I know the team haven't forgotten that yet because they've been doing so much work on it to sign it off. So we really do appreciate all that work that's gone on behind the scenes. I just want to make a couple of comments. I mean, it is a while ago, but there were some significant things. I think there's really, you know, speaks to the success of the capital program going from 30 to, you know, 60 odd million, you know, and that's the capability that's been built up, I believe, you know, within council. So it's council officers really driving. It's the likes of, you know, Ashley and Lily in those roles, you know, really key reporting, which I think is a great one for us is around those key projects, but also, you know, really good information that's on the website for the public as well. So it's, you know, it's in front of people. People can look at pretty much any time and get an up-to-date understanding of where those key projects are, which is really cool. You know, looking back, there was floods, there was all sorts, there was COVID. We signed off, you know, a COVID budget. We put 2 million aside for stimulus projects. And, you know, you can see now how some of those things have been really successful within the community. The likes of the rugby union project is you know, literally going to have the earth work start soon, which is pretty cool. You know, sea plays going to be ticked off this year, which is really cool as well. And we, you know, provided that early money for them. So, you know, there was a lot of really good things that, you know, happened in this year. And, you know, we're nearly signing off another one. But I'd just like to extend my thanks again to all the team because your work doesn't go unnoticed. And, you know, we just get to sign these things off at a governance level, but it's we really appreciate the work that everyone's done. So moving now to the recommendations. Everyone comfortable with where we're at as far as signing off the annual report? Councillor Burt, you happy to move? Councillor Piddington, big nod like that. It was strong. Any further discussion? Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Jason, and thank you, John. Appreciate all the work.
Thank you.
Things. Cheers.
Okay, bye.
Alrighty, go now to the main agenda, which reports. So we've got 9.1, which is Venture Timaru Quarterly Report, October 21 to December 21. So we welcome Nigel and Tony up. Welcome, team. Just hit the mic and we'll pass over to you, Nigel and Tony. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, councillors and staff. Yeah, we're here to talk to, we have our quarterly report, which has been tabled, which we'll take as read. We've also submitted our draft statement of intent as required by the 1st of March. And we have reignited the previous workshops that we had between the board and management of VT and mayor councillors and SLT. So I think that's in your diaries for the 20, better get the date right, 26th of April, where we'll do that deeper dive, because it's always the challenge. We're only just past halfway through the current year submitting our draft SOI for the next. So, but we look forward to that workshop with you all on the 26th of April. So, yeah, our report, as I mentioned, we'll take it as read. We're happy to field any questions and extend comments as appropriate. So, thank you.
Thanks, Nigel. Anything to add, Tony, at this point? Oh, good. Questions, team. Councillor Piddington.
Thanks for that, Nigel. Look, just around housing, it's obviously frustrating for you, Nigel, not to have the availability of houses in a certain price bracket to attract workers to Timaru. And on that, I note for sections on Trade Me Today, under 300, Timaru have 5, Ashburton have 30. So I appeal to my councillors to be brave when it comes to the growth management strategy, that we actually do make more land available that is attractive and cheaper. Thanks.
Is that a question?
Well, I kind of got a question early tonight. So you can follow up.
Thanks, Nigel. Have you got any follow-up comments on that? Obviously, topical.
Yeah, I think
worthy in the weekend.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think the comment, you know, our Venture Timaru's position is as stated there, and I think it's really important. We use the term we, and we're talking about we as a district. Council, one piece of the jigsaw, they're an important part of that. But as are we, the economic development agency, the landowner, the developer, potential enabler, investors as well. And, you know, I pointed out, obviously, our near neighbours, but there are other examples as well that, you know, and we've got to be bold, to use your word, Councillor Piddington, bold, courageous, and step forward together with this and have a real approach around how can we make this happen. And please, I'm not all about growth for growth's sake. But it is an inhibitor. We have examples. We've been engaging significantly through the business community, and we're happy to, you know, make those introductions and include that in an additional piece of probably forward-looking work, more around the not only the availability and potential for large residential subdivisions, but also around those businesses helping inform the challenges and the real examples that they've had around attracting, but as importantly, retaining their staff as well. So look, it's a big priority of ours, and we're really looking forward to working alongside council and other parties as well. And we are here to help facilitate those discussions. I appreciate, you know, council are an enabler in their own right. But you and your staff operate in a regulatory environment, and we're fully understanding of that. But we've got to take the opportunity to be creative. We need to look at public-private partnership opportunities out there, and really, I think there's a willingness, from what I understand, in individual conversations with some of you around the table, but also our wider business community, to really take this by the horn, so to speak. We can't be having the same conversations that we've been having probably for the last 10, 20, potentially 30 years. We are missing out, and I encourage boldness. So thank you.
Thanks, Nigel. Yeah, look, just to comment on that, I think, this council's all on board. I can't speak for everyone, but tell me if I'm wrong, but we are all on board in getting this right, and that's why we have reviewed the growth management strategy. That process is still being undertaken to inform the district plan, obviously, with the, with it in mind that we get this right for the next, 10, 20 and 30 years. And so we can plan the future growth for the district, the whole district, that is, because really important that we get it right for Geraldine, Temuka, Pleasant Point, and also industry. Exactly. So we are invested in getting that right, but take on point the challenge as well. Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Your Worship. You sort of stole my words by making sure that we are, as a council, looking not just Timaru Urban, but the rest of our satellite towns. And we as a council, we need to be able to work with developers. We need to have that door open a lot more than I think we've had, to builders, developers, people, and make their journey going for it a lot easier. I've got no answers how you do it, but it needs to be a perception out there for builders and developers that it'll be an easier road than it has been in the past. So I'm fully supportive of it. There's land allocated in different parts of our smaller towns that have got the potential, and our small towns have got the infrastructure to handle it too. So I just want to keep that in mind. Yeah, thank you.
And most definitely, Councillor O'Reilly, our position on this is district-wide. There are opportunities across those towns throughout the district, and there's the time is now. We just need to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Burt.
Just in some of that, a lot of that enablement you're talking about is stymied by regulation that is there in front of us now. The RMA reforms is going to change that. The RMA sort of, I think, logic of where they're going and what they're saying is as part of this local government reform does have elements of making that easier and what have you. Having said that, we were here the other day. This is not just a complete comment, there's a question. And we talked about some of these parcels of land that we look at and everything. Anecdotally and directly from what I ascertained is that a particular developer has his fingers in all those pies, and looking at what you've said and capturing it, the logic behind it is that when you've got a developer who has the ability to release land as he wants to without having the issue of maintaining it the way it is and building his assets up and releasing them as he requires at the market value that is most applicable to him, that's the thing that stymies us as well. I mean, we can reduce aspects of the regulations around what he needs to, what he can do, so we can reduce some of those stymied by regulation. But what else is there for us when he actually is in total control?
It's a challenge, but I think there's opportunities, I believe, for, if I can use the term, of us as an independent to play a bit of a role in those conversations. But at the end of the day, yes, a developer, regardless of who it is there to make money. But then again, so is the guy that fixes your car or fixes your computer. And I think it really comes down to what are the levers both within a regulatory environment and or outside a regulatory environment that council and others, an enabler investor, a third party or enabler investor that may be able to be introduced, can sit at the table and have some of those open conversations around, well, what will it take to open this piece of land? What will it take to, and I'm talking, as we spoke of in our report there, there may be 80 odd hectares or whatever of already existing residentially zoned land, say within the Timaru area. I would question how much of that is actually able to be developed into residential land. But again, it's their pockets. They're not the economies of scale that we need to come back to the point that Councillor Piddington mentioned at the start. We've got to have that diversity of product, from apartments to townhouses to my sweet spot house and land packages that I keep talking about. And you're only going to do that with economies of scale and encouraging a developer who, some have philanthropic bones in their bodies as well, that might not necessarily, if you're looking at something like that, they may join with a enabler investor or not, as the case may be, but not warrant a 25-30% return on what they would normally get because it's the right thing to do for us and our community and our communities and wider districts.
So that's one of the keys in it, finding that right developer who can achieve that. But
also enabling investors. There's opportunities potentially, I talk about public-private partnerships that may be council directly. It could be the holdings company. It could be other parties keen to invest in the district.
Councillor Wills.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. In fact, you mostly lead into my actual question for you, Nigel. I know that Councillor Burt has sort of had a bit of a fluffy roundabout way to it, but have you actually actively engaged with some of the private sector / CCOs and try and look at it being an enabler for those organisations to come together? Have you actively gone out and sought some of that? Has it proved to be beneficial, or are you finding you're running?
There are what I call enabling investors there, both locally and in the wider South Island, that if the opportunity is there, who would front foot and look at investing in the Timaru district. We're engaged with a couple of the professionals who have got parties sitting on their shoulder, basically keen to invest in the Timaru district in large scale residential development.
Right. So if we're to promote that and try and actively sort of get it moving, what are some of the things that's locking us up at the moment? Is there anything you can do from your perspective as an organisation?
The role that we can play as an organisation is that some of the conversations that we're able to have as your economic development agency are probably a bit more direct and targeted, and they shouldn't be conversations probably that council should be having. As a quasi-independent, we can corral those parties at the table and go, well, hey, look, if the opportunity arose, what would it need to look like? What would be the inhibitors, or what would be the attractors to you to actually, step forward and be part of the growth and development of the district?
So you're aware of at the moment some of the discussions going on to try and promote?
Yeah, we're having some of those discussions. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you. Otherwise, good work.
Councillor Wills. Councillor Lyon.
Thank you, Worship. Nigel and Tony, interesting report. I don't know quite what you expect council, what our role should be. Market forces usually take a big part in everything that goes on within a community economically. And the last time I saw the median house price in Timaru was 440 to 470 or something like that. So we're in a very good area for people to purchase property. So we're not just bereft of opportunities for people to come, I wouldn't have thought. What do you think of that? Are we bereft of opportunities or not with house prices?
House prices are one thing. The availability or the diversity of stock within what's on the market at any given time is the key. Our median house price now is just actually clipped up over 500, and we've got to have, talking to our businesses who have, we're so diverse, we require the breadth of workforce and their ability to purchase a house at 350, 400 through to $1 million plus. They're all there. You're quite right. The market needs to dictate. But if we have developers and landowners and builders and investors that are willing to take that on, what we're looking, or what I would respectfully suggest from council, is a clear mandate or direction that you're willing to and wish to proactively progress opportunities for large-scale residential development, and that there's a willingness to be creative in adopting how can we make this happen approach, and also the inclusion of a full investigation into public-private partnership opportunities. But we've got to have those conversations. Market will dictate, you're quite right, but at the end of the day, you know, we're sitting here, as I put in my report, you know, our population growth is one thing, or lack of. I would almost, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, I almost turn that on its head and say that given the strong foundations that the district has around its location, the fact that we've got servicing port, airport, we've got 7 secondary schools, we've got a DHB, and our diversity of our industry sector, the bit that's missing that is an inhibitor is that diversity of our housing stock. So it is almost, you know, I hate to use the term, it's build it and they will come, but we've at least got to try.
What's your view on the reality of some kind of subsidy, which is a suggestion that can be made, you know, on land prices for potential buildings in the future? Because somebody pays for everything, don't they? Land's worth whatever land's worth, and you can chop it up in small pieces and get more houses on, do it that way.
Yep. Or
Or you can do many things. But how do you see what's the council's role? Is our role to free up more land so that the building activity can and will come, as you say, sometime in the future? Or are you suggesting that we should get in the fraught area like government tried, the recent socialist government tried, the housing, a cheap housing market, which is fraught in every way if you try and do it on its own? You're not suggesting we get involved at that end of the market solely as a council, surely, are you?
I think we need to have some, we need to look at all options, to be quite honest. I'm not saying no or yes to that last question, but there are ways and means around, you know, the large scale residential development. If you had an enabler investor sitting there that doesn't necessarily need a 25 or 30% return, they might be happy with a 10 or a 12 or a 15. That difference can be applied to a certain amount of those sections to bring the land price down straight off. There's a variety of options sitting in there. It's not for me to tell or tell council what they should and shouldn't be doing in that space, but we've got other areas that are being creative and looking outside the box that are moving ahead, and we need to catch up, we need to pass them.
No, yeah, it's an interesting conversation, isn't it, really? But
Yeah.
But look, I'm sure we'll get there. But you have more faith in people's ability to want to participate in percentage of a profit, you know, to a greater degree or less, because business is business in the end.
Oh
isn't it?
yeah,
People
yeah,
aren't
I'm
there
sure.
for good of for getting a haircut, are they? They're there to make a few bob. So we should enable. That's our game. I'm sure you agree with that.
Exactly.
You agree with that. But to keep going further than that, you're getting onto really tricky, dicey country that I'm not sure council's role is to be there. But that's just my view. So I'll leave it there.
Yep, I appreciate that, Councillor Lyon. And at the end of the day, as I say, we're not here to tell council what to do. Far from it. Never go down that stretch. But council are one piece of this jigsaw, just as the landowner, the developer, the enabling investor. There are enabling investors out there that will look to do developments, residential developments, other business opportunities, because it is the right thing for that community. And this isn't the forum to probably comment further on that.
Yeah, it might be one to bring out the biscuits for. Councillor Booth.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess, you know, we've got a aging population here in Timaru, South Canterbury, and in our district in general. And we are looking, we've got lots of jobs, we've got a great lifestyle, but we're missing a group of people that are not coming to South Canterbury and setting up and bringing their families, the kids that go to our schools and contribute to our, right across the whole board. And so I see that there's people, even though, you know, that demographic that wants to buy and build a house in that 500, 600,000, and they can literally go anywhere. But, you know, actually we've got a great lifestyle here. But we have to have land and the ability to actually for them to come. I guess the growth management strategy, you could almost call this a growth restriction strategy, because it restricts and it tries to, presently it tries to consolidate, which we keep trying to, you know, we want that in respect to utilising our facilities and our pipes in the ground, etc. But really, if you look back 50 years ago and had a look to see where our town has expanded to, there was no planning around that, and it actually just happened with people saying, "Oh, cut that paddock up now," and the result of that is a lack of public facilities for them to use. And North End of Timaru is a prime example of that, and you know, commercial areas. So, you know, I think we should be bold, and I'm obviously we're not attracting those families, and they're not bringing their kids here because they're at that demographic where they've got enough money to actually build a house, and that's what they want. They want a new house in a new suburb surrounded by new other families of the same, you know, in the same age group. So, you know, while we're trying to encourage everyone to go into the middle of town, it suits some people, but there's a whole nother group that actually just aren't coming. So I applaud you for what you've said, and it's a reflection that I see is actually happening, which is real in South Canterbury. Thank you.
Yeah, I think different parts of the market, isn't it? Supplying enough stock for all elements. I'm going to go to Councillor Gilchrist, who has been waiting patiently, and then I'll Councillor Oliver. Do you want to have a moment as well? Yep. And we'll go to Councillor Oliver, and I'll come back to Councillor Lyons. So Councillor Gilchrist.
Thanks, Mayor Nigel. Kia ora, Nigel and Tony. Nice to see you. Thank you for your quarterly report. I just wonder, Nigel, if you can be a little more specific from the discussions you've been having with potential developers and things. What does the creative solution look like to you? Can you give us any specific examples?
I think the creative solution is really sitting down and engaging directly and making sure the parties are right around the table. And it includes that availability of land, a clear direction that, yes, we have identified through the growth management strategy that these are the parts of our districts, towns that can, or dare I say should, be developed into residential properties, and have those conversations direct with those landowners, the developers, the introduction of those developers. What are the barriers? Yes, development costs are up there. Yes, they're in the establishment of the infrastructure, you know, the water, the pipes, the electricity, all that is all part and parcel of it. But, you know, there's willingness there from people within our district and investors within and outside the district to be part of this. And we've just got to have those facilitated discussions. Obviously, you know, there's commercial sensitivities around naming who they are and those sorts of things in an open forum. That's not appropriate at all. But, you know, it comes with a clear, it needs that clear direction that, look, we are up for this. So let's look at these pieces and parcels of land. The other challenges, and please, I want to make it really clear that we need to ensure that we have those conversations around, is that the right piece of land? Is that better for, you know, for more, you know, like horticulture land use? You know, we don't want to fall into the traps of Auckland and that as well.
Sorry, just one more thing, Nigel. Do you see sort of expanding outside our boundaries a little as the only way, or do you think there's some value in some of the other things we can do, enabling, I don't know, smaller lots for sort of more urban areas, making it easier for people to subdivide sections and do infill housing. Do you think it's a blend of things, or are you really just targeting those, land and package, land and building? Do you think that's the only thing we need?
No, I agree completely, Councillor Gilchrist. It is a blend. It's not a one cap fits all. The work that the council is committed to do and through our city hub, the engagement that group is having around earthquake buildings, looking at inner city living, also the intensification, I better use the right word, is it, of near dwellings, the land there's been changes there. So it's a mix of it all. The challenge, I suppose, with the bit around 2 sections here and 3 sections there or whatever, is it doesn't give the economies of scale. The landowner then needs to get as top dollar as they can for that 2 sections there, or even 10 there or whatever, as opposed to a large residential subdivision that gives you those economies of scale over a variety of stages. That's the challenge for those 2 sections at the back of my place, or the 5 on the Ponderosa or the Burts or whoever else.
Yeah, or the couple of hectares that could be 10 sections, or it could be 15 small sections.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Nigel.
Thanks, Councillor Gilchrist. Councillor Oliver.
Firstly, thanks, Nigel, for your housing report. That was awesome, 4 really good paragraphs, and I definitely agree with Councillor Piddington in being bold. I'd just like to ask this question, Nigel. Councillor Booth made quite a good suggestion last week that maybe we should be heading north with housing into some big possible flat allotments between Seadown and Timaru. When he mentioned that, there was instant rejection because of regulatory constraints. How do we challenge those regulatory constraints in the future? Because I really feel that it's probably stifling growth quite badly.
That's not my field of expertise. I appreciate the question. That's not something I can answer, to be quite honest. I think it really comes down to what I mentioned before. I think the work that's being undertaken at the moment by council around reviewing and refreshing the growth management strategy, identifying those parcels of land, and then it comes down to a case of prioritising those and the challenges associated with the parcels of land that you've mentioned. Obviously, from a regulatory perspective, and either, I don't know if this is the right term, sorry, the opening up, the progression of those into residential or further development. That's not my field of expertise, but that's something that, council can potentially bring to the table alongside those landowners if there's desire there.
You all good with that, Councillor?
Yeah, thanks, Nigel.
Cool. Thank you. Councillor Lyon.
Yeah, just finally, the good news is that there's land opening up at Pleasant Point in Temuka, just north of Timaru. So it's ongoing as we speak. So I'm sure you agree that opportunities are out there and going very well. But I just want to ask you a question briefly about the natural order of housing and housing ownership, and the reality of it's lots of logical progression. You buy the house you can afford, then you move to a better one when you can, and everybody does that. And that's the way things have always been. The thing that's changed potentially, and I want your comment on this, is that the amount of housing stock which is now tied up in rental and ownership by, for all the reasons that people buy rentals, and that's their perfect right to do that. But it changed the demographics of the ability of homes to be available in different pricing categories. So just asking you, has anything changed, or that natural order still occurring, people stepping up through properties to get to a certain point, property values? Or is there something new going on that I've missed?
No, like everyone else, we're seeing that. But the other piece that you've touched on around rentals is there's an extreme shortage of them, those locally as well. Our larger employers across our food processing sector struggle to find, they're continually asked by new employees to assist them in that market. A number of them have actually invested themselves in their own rental properties, just like the education sector. Some of the commentary we've had from them is around, if we didn't have the schoolhouses, we would have been in dire straits around attracting these staff. But yeah, it is a changing demographic. You're spot on the money. The current environment, cost of living, those house prices that have continued to rise, out of reach potentially of some of those first home buyers. But again, the variety of housing stock, it's getting in. Councillor Piddington is, with his day job, would be better placed to answer this question, I believe. But that foothold to get into the market, if it's a 2-bedroom department, and then save and grow. But there are challenges there, notwithstanding any potential correction that may happen or not. But as much around those the diversity of offering of residential property, that rental discussion has to come in there as well. I did notice the government had progressed a BFR. They were talking, I think about a year ago, a BFR, build for rent subsidy, to encourage people that could and had the wherewithal to build to rent to get more stock onto the market. But it seems to have less priority to it. Yeah.
Alrighty, thank you. Good discussion. Look, there's a couple of things that I just want to point to, and I think you raised. We do have to look, and council is looking at current zoning of land, and there's land banking out there. I think we're all aware of that, but we're also aware of developments that zoned residential, as an example, that have sat for 15 years and achieved nothing. So we have to ask the questions: is that the right land? Is it ever going to be developed? If not, should it be considered? So, there's some interesting questions that we have to challenge ourselves. But one probably challenge, I think, for BT would be in the competition element of it. And obviously you're having those conversations, but, more players in that residential development market would certainly benefit, I believe, the district. And so I'm sure that's a role where BT can actively play. And I won't mention, names as such, but I'm sure most people would know who residential players are across the country, and there's some that aren't active in Timaru but could be. Just moving off to the side, I think we covered that pretty well. I'm sure Doug's got enough for a good story, good headline, be bold. Just a question around stock base. Pretty exciting for Timaru. In your mind, how big is this and what can it bring? It's a real opportunity to sell ourselves. So, what can this do for the district outside of the obvious?
It is huge. There's everything we can think of. I say this a bit, there's everything we can think of today, but there's everything that will come up through the course of this. We're kicking off with a formal pay-free event to welcome both Antarctic New Zealand and Lees to the district early next month. But there's a strong desire from Antarctic NZ to fully embed themselves in our community. Across education opportunities, there are opportunities for our Tamariki and Rangatahi for education, but more so our Rangatahi careers, apprenticeships, the opportunity to establish that relationship with Antarctic New Zealand off the back of this build to grow it to other things. The opportunity for us to showcase that we can do this and we will do this here in Timaru successfully, that may be attractive to others who are located down there as well. So engaging with Beth and Eric, ensuring those wider opportunities around the Heritage Trust with, exhibitions, art exhibitions, those sorts of things right through. So it's everything and anything, to be quite honest. And the promotional opportunities, we're starting to kick off those at the overview and approval of Antarctic NZ. In the next 6 months or so, once some of those initial contractual and final design things have been completed, we're going to see a lot more on this. One of the initial ones is around getting some storyboards up that we're finalising with Antarctic NZ as well, just to provide our communities, and they can be moved around, you know, in the library at Timaru or out at the community centre in Geraldine or Point here, Sea Bay, just showing a bit of history around New Zealand and Scott based, an overview of the project, those sorts of things. And there's a variety of opportunities, but huge, Your Worship, it really, really is. And, you know, it was great to sit alongside yourselves and especially the lead that Prime Port took to really push our case. And that's great for us and great for a provincial NZ to get a project like this.
Nice one to get over our friendly neighbours, isn't it? Councillor Piddington.
Just on that, Nigel, before I ask my real question, have you talked to Prime Port about some sort of viewing platform? Because there'll be a lot of interest in around it. And I know the port's largely closed off, but just
so the bit immediately to the seaside, there's if you stand actually on our corner, Mr. Booth's corner, and look down, there's a large shingle hill almost. And Phil's got his engineers looking at, we will establish a viewing platform there with some storyboards. There will be, we already talked things like time-lapse cameras, real-time cameras, all those sorts of things.
Thank you.
And yeah, and as it evolves, the ability for a lot of curriculum work, we've already introduced Antarctic New Zealand to the Iraqi and the secondary school and primary schools associations. There's a lot of curriculum resources and engagement that we can have as well. So yeah, it's right in front of us. Anything and everything we're open for as Antarctic New Zealand.
My question, Nigel, I know it's COVID time, so it's a pretty tough question to answer, but round events of the funding, 159K and the first one, I guess I was hoping to see some new events and to attract new people to the town. The list is good and they're hard working, but they're already events we've had. I know you yourselves have dabbled in the seaside events, but how do we attract other events and let them know there is a wee stream of funding if they choose Timaru over Invercargill, Nelson, Ashburton? Yeah. Because the list I see is what we normally do. And they're valuable events, don't get me wrong, but I'm looking to grow it.
Yeah, as are we. And you're right, it's a really challenging time. Like of the, you know, of that initial round of funding, a number of events were deferred for a period of up to 12 months because of the settings. But look, I agree, it's diversity. We're really keen to and are exploring the evening out of the hump. What more can we do in these winter months? What are some of the winter, new winter events to even out what is traditionally a September through, I was going to say summer period, but that finishes about January, doesn't it? So, but through that March, April period. And, you know, you're quite right. Seaside Festival was slated as a large one. We've got Brews on the Bay, which is a new event coming up in the start of October. And one of the huge opportunities we believe is the extension or an expansion of SCOF into the winter months around what might that look like as an add-on or a new facility, a new event. Equally so, though, those existing events which are established but are continually developing and growing or being enhanced, especially in the current environment, in my view, are equally as important because they do attract people from outside the area into our district. And but I take your point. We're always looking at what more can we do, who can we add, and there are some new ones have been slated. They took place, albeit in a bit of that because of COVID, but it's opened our eyes up to, you know, even the likes of the kites, for argument's sake, at the Seaside Festival. Like they just, it was, the response was phenomenal, and even from those that took part, they're talking to us, we're talking to them around what that might look like next year on a bigger scale.
And Nigel, one of the things with that, it's free. I mean, it's great for the
Yeah.
kids. I mean, I was down the bay, there were hundreds of people running around. So, you know, a bit like sea play, it's going to be free. So that's an attraction in itself.
Yeah.
You know, so it's great to see. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Piddington. Really good points. Any further questions? I think we're there. Cool. Can I have a mover? We go back to recommendations, receiving notes, and also a received note draft statement of intents. Comfortable with both of those? We haven't discussed that at all.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you. Got Councillor Lyon, and then we'll go Councillor Gilchrist. For those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Thank you, team. Appreciate that. Thanks, Nigel and Tony.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, everybody.
So welcome now, Mr. Munro, waiting patiently in the back. And also Mr. Rogers on Zoom. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we'll pass to you, team. Who wants to lead?
Yeah, I will. Thank you. Your Worship, councillors. We'll start with the half-yearly report. So noting it's a snapshot in time to the end of December. The financials are tracking okay and the balance sheet's strong, and that's continuing into this year as well. The Port of Tauranga engagements have been postponed last year, so I've been Zooming with David Pilkington to continue shareholder-to-shareholder engagement. I've also congratulated Julia Hoare, who'll be the new Port of Tauranga chair when David concludes his tenure. And regarding Alpine Energy, we've had active engagement with fellow shareholders and with the Alpine Energy chair as well during this period. So I'll hand over to Fraser if he's got anything to add to that from an operational perspective.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors, and thanks for having us here. I'll add that you had some really good engagement with the Alpine shareholders and working collaboratively with them, revising the shareholders agreement. So that's been progressing really, really well. But happy to take questions on any part of the report.
Questions? Councillor Booth.
Yeah, thank you. I was probably just wanting to clarify in page 44. You've got the showgrounds, 6.4 million, showgrounds expenses, 5 million and 59. So does that in a profit of, I guess, 1.2? So is that actually what the profit is, or is that actually, does that 5 million include the interest that you accumulated over the 4 years?
No, that 5 million is the original cost of the property, and the interest is in the finance costs.
So how did that wash out then? Did you lose money on that after interest, or did you actually make money?
So what we did is when we negotiated the sale price, we took the acquisition cost, interest costs, holding costs, and some other bits and pieces, added a bit to it, and that was the sale price, right? So that's how it will wash out at the end of the day. Because the property gets revalued every year, and so TDHL and our associates revalue our properties every year. That's what we have to do, as you've heard. Then there's a difference between what we sold it for, and there's a difference between what we acquired it for and what we hold it for. So there's quite a bit of accounting adjustments throughout the years and reconciliations throughout the years to account for that. But in effect, we will come out just above, head above water, as the intention was.
So I see the difference in last year's numbers. Your finance charges were $1,006,000. This year they are, let's see, 500, I think, 500 or 600. So there's a difference of around 412,000 per year for that year. So so I assume that's to do with the.
No, it's not all showgrounds. Some of it is historically TDHL paid the intercompany interest on the loan we've got with TDC, a year after. So there's a bit of lag there, but we caught up, or we started catching up last year. So to get rid of that, so we've been paying sort of twice for quite a while now.
And so the finance in there would be basically to do with the holding costs then on the buildings which you have on Stafford Street.
Finance costs?
Yeah.
No. The vast majority of that finance cost is the intercompany loan. So when TDHL was established in 97, we borrowed $20 odd million. I don't know how much.
22.
Thank you. 22. Well, it was a bit more at the time, but we borrowed a whole bunch off council, and we brought those assets. We bought Alpine and we bought Prime Port off council. So we borrowed the money off council to buy the assets off you. Okay, so that's the vast bulk of that finance cost is the interest. That's an interest-only loan that we've got with council, and so we pay you interest on that.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Councillor Booth. Councillor Piddington.
Well, Alan asked one of the questions. The other one is, what are the total expenses at 137 for the year on the showgrounds if we've sold it?
Oh, we haven't sold the whole site. So there's rates, and so those are quite considerable actually. So the vast majority of those are rates and but legal fees.
Okay. How much have we got left, Len? Just so I remind me.
Gee, was off the top of my head, maybe 4 to 5 hectares. And it's a progressive transfer of the bulk of that over the next couple of years, and then there's one remaining parcel.
That's assuming the new owner meets obligations as per agreements.
Yes.
That's why it was staged, I believe.
Yeah. Thank you. Further questions, team? Anyone on Zoom there? You two okay?
All good, thank you. No questions from me.
Yeah, Councillor Booth.
Yeah, look, also you've included the statement of intent. And I guess I did notice that you've made some changes, like in the mission statement. Last year was to be successful, growing business, increasing the value of the company, return to the shareholder, while taking into the account the special needs of the shareholder. That word's been changed to a different word.
Yeah, we changed that to strategic. Well, we proposed to change that to strategic priorities, because really the council's strategic priorities, as you identify through the long-term plan, is the bounds, or that's the scope within that TDHL should operate. So our strategic priorities should align with your strategic priorities. So we did that in order to make a stronger connection with our shareholder, and special needs just didn't really fit with the current language.
So when you put I guess the new statement of intent in front of us, did you make us aware of that, or was that was that sort of detailed?
We gave you a full copy of the statement.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah. And we talked through it. So
I feel it's a little bit lighter than sort of saying it's the special needs of the shareholder. So I guess that's what it is. So yeah, I just thought I'd note that.
We did it to strengthen the connection and strengthen the direction.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the change. I think it does strengthen it, actually. Special needs, strategic versus special.
I think what we'll take out of this is to clarify some of those changes more overtly next time when we make the submission of the SOI.
Sorry, Councillor Oliver, did you have a question? That's right. Nothing goes past Councillor Booth anyway, so I don't. No, you're all good.
Okay. I had, if I may, Your Worship, had a couple of points to touch on with the SOI.
Yep.
So it's, as we've indicated previously, it's a steady as it goes SOI. And under point 6, the objectives and performance targets on page 5 of the document, which is page 50 of the pack. You'll note there's the refinement of the strategic plan, which will guide future SOIs in alignment with council's strategic priorities. So that's part of the alignment there. And then under point 11, the performance targets on page 8, which is 53 of the pack, you'll note the $1 million dividend forecast through all the periods, noting the potential risk around associate dividend. And so we're taking a conservative approach with capacity for growth at this stage. So those were the points I wanted to highlight in case there were any other questions.
Cool, thanks, Mark. Further questions?
Yeah, just one for Mark. Stu here, Mark. Just I see there that you've said any surpluses would be used for debt reduction as opposed to giving it back to the shareholder, us, because we're in tough times as well. So can you tell me the theory behind that?
Well, I think if you look out through even to the 2024 year, you'll see that there's the associate revenue drops off. So we do have some risks, and we're just trying to balance that with debt repayment in the early stages so that we have flexibility and capacity down the track to ensure ongoing dividend. But it's a balance, and it's a discussion we're happy to have. Within the dividend policy in the document, we can increase if things go well, and we can signal that to the shareholder. So we're really putting that in there as a bottom line, that we say we will deliver 1 million every year for the next 3 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, and that's a consideration for council also if we were to, request further dividends based, of course, on, directors have obligations in regard to the company also. But I do recall, post Alpine Energy changes to the profit that they're delivering to TDHL, or dividend, should I say, was significantly reduced. So it was a bit more steady as she goes and look at debt reduction and other sort of things. So probably prudent at this stage, but valid point. And it's a consideration that council can make anytime.
Yeah, and I guess when we're looking at the overall structure and repayments, Fraser mentioned that loan as well to the council. There's also potential repayment there, which feeds funds back to council as well. So there are different mechanisms around the structures and cash flow mechanisms we can use.
Yeah, and I guess there's financial dividends, and also there's the other, what TDHL can potentially deliver for our community as well. There's, lots of opportunity sitting in there, isn't there? So, yeah. And we do have the ability to ask TDHL to specifically look at, things that might be council priorities as well, obviously. So any further questions? I think we've covered most. Councillor Booth.
Just one. Are there any capital requirements potentially on the horizon for either of your two key assets?
None that will draw on our reserves at the moment. The Prime Port, their capital plan is they've got a solid forward work program that they're funding through their own cash flows at the moment. Alpine is probably the one that is going through the more structural change potentially. So that's where we are taking a conservative line. At this stage, we don't see anything, but one never knows what's going to change in the world.
Yeah, and I guess further to that too, we've got a program of improvements and upgrades on our own property, which we'll be working through this year as well. So there's a bit of reinvestment into our own building stock.
And a couple of significant ones there as well too, isn't there, Fraser?
Yeah, quite significant.
So regards to the properties, how well leased are they? Are they leased like 80, 90% sort of leased? Or
yeah, we're above 95% leased. Got a couple of vacant properties, which working on some large scale opportunities for slowly. And but other than that, we're very high occupancy.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Any further comments, Mark or Fraser, before we?
No, I appreciate your time. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. No worries. So we go now to recommendations on 9.2, page 40. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Barker, thank you. So that's 1 and 2, including statement of intent. Councillor
Happy to
O'Reilly, thank
second.
you. Oh, you just missed out there,
Yep.
Councillor Gilchrist. Riley, yeah.
That petty.
Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Fraser. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Move forward now. We do have public excluded, but before we go into that, we've got consideration of urgent business. There was none. Consideration of minor nature matters. Just one. I might just ask, do you mind coming up? Is that okay? Is that just in regard to, and then I'll go to Councillor Booth in a moment. So I think the question, and I won't put words in your mouth, Councillor Booth, but in regard to vaccination mandates, obviously there's some changes, and and I'm aware that we're working proactively to move forward away from mandates, and could you perhaps give us an update on where we're at? Thanks, team.
Through your worship, following from our last conversation that we had around the vaccine mandates, we've gone out and provided just an update of where we're currently at and just maintaining the status quo with the mandate, but with a note that we are regularly reviewing this. So with that, looking at this week, we recognize tomorrow we've got a large announcement from government. We are looking to actively do two things. One, we're assessing how we move out of the vaccine mandate for the vaccine passes, which are access to our sites requiring vaccine passes. We also then have an obligation to our staff and understanding what that would potentially entail for staff mandates internally. So we have kind of two work streams that we're working through at the moment. With that, what we're looking to do is understand what the government announcement is tomorrow to see how we could actively move forward with the vaccine the vaccine pass site, and looking to quickly move out as soon as we can. We're recognizing this, ensuring the highest level of safety for our staff and community at the same time. So that the other end of that is actually reviewing where we currently are through our risk assessments and health and safety standards for staff as well. With that, with the current settings in our our vaccine pass policy as well. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's
Okay. Cool. So have you taken any questions for the team? So not wanting to announce an announcement, but when do you think we might be looking at in the position to make?
What we're wanting to do is, so as not to have to do a lot of rework, knowing that we have an announcement tomorrow, we want to hear what's being said, which will hopefully enable us to be a lot more clear on exactly what we can mandate as far as reducing any standards or any past requirements coming into buildings. Not knowing what that, it's a little easier, I think, with the likes of the library, museum, and art gallery. C-Bay is a little less. So depending on what's announced, we may have better opportunity to make just more clarity and just keeping the message really simple coming out to the community. So we're looking to write really smartly after that announcement. We've done a lot of background work. We've sought some legal advice around how it's best to proceed, as we've made some really key settings with internally as far as our risk assessments go for ourselves and the community. And we're prepared to make a quick announcement after that. So I would say late Wednesday, we would be able to come out on where we're heading.
Cool. Thank you. So looking to be in a position to make an announcement for any potential changes late Wednesday. That sounds good. Councillor Parker.
Thank you. As part of your risk assessment, are you looking at the percentage of South Canterbury population that's been
vaccinated, because we are sitting quite high. I'm looking partially at 94, fully at 93, and boosted at 76.6% in South Canterbury. So how does that weigh in your risk assessment? How much weight does it carry?
So you raise a really valid point. So when we initially did the risk assessment, this was very new to us, and we were going off some advice from Solomon. What I've already flagged is that actual structure of the risk assessment needs to be reviewed in light of things like vaccination rates across South Canterbury, other health and safety mechanisms that we've put in place. In addition to that, we have to look at what the next set of goal is for the next phase. The first goal was reducing spread and transmission. We need to kind of ascertain what that is. That helps inform. So what I would imagine is that risk assessment will have another couple of lines added to it that includes factors such as that, or at least commentary on that, because we didn't have that information. So yeah, that's already been flagged as there's some external factors we have better knowledge of now. So let's use and look at that and see what that does to the final outcome.
So with the central government's announcement on Wednesday, was it Wednesday? Tomorrow. So then you'll be in a position then to do another risk assessment, or is it, how do you see this fold out? Sorry.
From a people's strategy point of view, yes, we will be going through the same process we did originally. We'll revise the risk assessments, we'll add those amendments to it, and we'll take it to staff and say, how have we got this right? Give us some feedback. And then based on that, we'll either have to reconsult if we're making changes, or we would say, look, we've got enough to make a decision, and we'll be able to go through the motions. I've already started some prep work with that with our external lawyers, just to make sure we're getting our checks and balances. So that's already work that's now on the way.
And the percentage of the TDC staff are vaccinated. And I felt that they gave us quite a clear steer here the other day regarding minimising the mandate, releasing it. How much weight in consideration will you hold with what the staff are advocating for?
That's a hard one to answer without knowing where the lay of the land sits and what the feedback consists of. It's not necessarily we attribute a percentage of weight to a decision making. We take a really global approach, and then based on the issues raised, we'll factor all of those in. It's not necessarily yes or no. It's does it preclude issues in terms of safety that we need to address, and it could be this further mitigation that needs to be done. It's not necessarily that verbatim. So when you look at health and safety, you look at all the other controls that are put in place, and that's some things we need to explore. Screens, mask wearing, that sort of. So I probably can't give a straight answer, but it's part of a decision. It's not 20%, for instance. It's a global approach we'll have to take.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thanks. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Parker has just indicated, the high percentage of vaccinated people in all our facilities. People are vaccinated. And again, we heard a fairly clear message from them who were the reason we implemented the vaccine mandates for a starter to protect them. Now they've clearly said that they would like them removed, and they are the face that are having to confront this daily. So yeah, I'm keen to see it should be finished as far as I'm concerned. So, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Booth. Any further questions? Oh, sorry. Councillor Oliver. Yeah, and Councillor Oliver's experiencing COVID at the moment. How are you going with that, Councillor Oliver?
It just feels like I've been slamming tequilas for a couple of days, but outside of that, I think I'm coming right. Another couple of days off work, I'll be good. I just want to ask a quick question in relation to all the facilities. Is it possible that because of some of the government mandates stipulate numbers of people that can be in those facilities? Are we open to the fact we don't have to open all the facilities at once, and we will open them staggered if we need to? So will we be prepared to open our museums, libraries and that before perhaps we can open up our stadium and our swimming pool because of what the government mandates are?
Yeah, I'll let Eric speak to it, but the challenge, you're right, Councillor Oliver, the challenge, it'll be easier for libraries, museums, etc. The challenge is probably going to be around Sea Bay. It's got a gym, which has different rules again, and also has a cafe, which has different rules again, and how we work through that. So I guess, something we probably in the information we're wanting to hear from government is, the pathway out for the likes of a facility like that, I would be imagining, but I'm happy for you to comment further if need be.
Through you, Your Worship, that is one thing we want to ensure that we get some clarity. As you're well aware, we've made some decisions as we've all worked through this over the past year or so, and we've had to make quick adjustments because the government will make an announcement the next day or they'll make some changes. So we're knowing what we have coming tomorrow. We want to hear what's said. We think it's prudent, and then we can quickly make a decision. It doesn't prevent us from making certain steps that we have the ability to do. So I think that's also really clear too. So if we deem that it's prudent for us to relax in certain areas, but we're hoping it'll give us more clarity around like the gym and the pools and swimming as well. So hopefully we can give one clear message on where we're heading instead of having to backtrack and make multiple different confusing messages as well. The one key thing we will, well, obviously depending on the settings, we will have to manage within those traffic light settings, as Councillor was just saying. We'll just whatever is announced, we'll make sure that we can operate and we can operate effectively. I think that's the key thing. Just going back, just reiterating, this Councillor Parker with your question, we are, like I said, there's really the kind of two processes and two decisions that we're making. One is there's the internal process that will take some time because we do have to engage with staff. We do have to review the policy and make sure that the risk assessment that we did conduct before is updated and that we're doing it like with more information that we have on hand. And then the separate decision is what we do with the VAX passes for site access, which is a quicker process as we don't necessarily, well, we don't have to engage. We just have to ensure that the safety is prudent and our decision making is clear.
So I guess in the interest of the public, one is not going to hold the other up.
Yeah,
which is probably the key thing that people will want to hear. So yeah, sorry, Councillor Puddington.
Yeah, look, because I mean, we need to get there as soon as possible, but because of the traffic light system, if you take the events centre, if you take the passes away, you can only put 25 in there. If the pass remains in place, you can put 100 kids in there. So the rules are almost working against themselves in some ways. So we just need to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, it does become confusing once the, once that education changes came through. It does make it muddier.
And some of the codes have their own vaccine pass requirements as well. So yeah, there's a few layers for us to just cut through.
Yeah. So as far as the public is concerned, would it be safe to say that we'll be in a position maybe tomorrow?
Yeah, our hopes is late tomorrow, if not
tomorrow.
Thursday morning at the latest. Yeah, depending on when the announcement's made.
It's for library, museum and art gallery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sticker, a bit more challenging.
Yeah.
The internal process, we've got a different timeline for.
Yeah. No, perfect. Thank you. Any further questions? I think that's good. It's good to go forward. Everyone comfortable with that? Yeah. You just talk amongst yourself over there, team. Councillor Wills, Councillor Burt. Geez, I nearly got out the hammer. Right. Moving forward, thanks. Appreciate the update. We do need to now go to exclusion of the public. I've got some minutes in there. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Wills, Councillor Burt, thank you. Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Just give a moment for the team to get organised there.